Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that the past you remembered never happened. Newspapers are replaced to match the new facts. People vanish, not in secret, but as if they never existed. Your private thoughts are dangerous. A clock in every room watches you. Language itself is being shrunk until the words you need to even think about rebellion have gone. That is the world George Orwell gives us in 1984. A world that's terrifying not because of overt brutality alone, but because of the slow, methodical rewriting of truth. This book is not a story about technology or futuristic gadgets. It's a study in power, how a regime transforms history, language, private life, and thought until resistance becomes nearly impossible. In the next half hour, I'll take you through every chapter of Orwell's novel, part by part, chapter by chapter, capturing the plot, the atmosphere, and the cruelty of a society that reduces human beings to nothing more than instruments of a political machine. Along the way, I'll highlight the book's warnings that still matter today. The danger of concentrated power, the fragility of truth, and the human cost of total surveillance. Let's start at the beginning with a man called Winston Smith and follow him through memory, desire, rebellion, and the inevitable machinery of punishment that swallows him whole. On a cold and dismal April day in London, now renamed Airstrip 1, Winston Smith hurries into the grimy entrance of his apartment building, Victory Mansions. The building reeks of boiled cabbage and stale cooking, its stairwells littered with dust and filth. The plaster crumbles from the walls, and the elevators never function. Even in these miserable conditions, the eyes of Big Brother are everywhere. His face stares out from huge posters pasted across every surface, accompanied by the chilling slogan, "Big Brother is watching you." Inside his flat, the telescreen blares propaganda, filling the air with noise that cannot be escaped, for it can never be switched off. Seeking a shred of privacy, Winston hides in a narrow alcove where the telescreen cannot see him directly. There, with trembling hands, he produces an old-fashioned diary and pen, tools that feel both alien and forbidden. He writes the date, April 4th, 1984. Though he is unsure if that year is even correct, for the party has long since dissolved any certainty of time. To keep a diary is a dangerous act, punishable by death or decades in forced labor camps. Yet Winston is driven by an irresistible need to preserve his thoughts. As his pen scratches across the page, he is overtaken by a torrent of feeling and scrawls the words over and over. Down with Big Brother. In that moment, he knows he has crossed an invisible line, committing thought crime. A sharp knock at Winston's door sends a shock of terror through him. His diary lies open on the table, a damning piece of evidence should the thought police burst in. But the visitor is only Mrs. Parsons, his weary neighbor, requesting help with her blocked sink. Relieved but still anxious, Winston follows her into her shabby flat, which is as dilapidated as his own, but filled with the smells of sweat and unwashed clothing. Inside are her two children, wild and restless, dressed in the uniforms of the spies, the youth organization indoctrinated to serve the party. They jeer at Winston, brandish toy weapons, and accuse him of being a thought criminal and a traitor. Their aggression unsettles him deeply. He sees in them the terrifying success of the party's control, for children have been weaponized to betray even their parents. The bond of family, once sacred, has been replaced by loyalty to Big Brother. That night, Winston dreams of his mother and younger sister, who vanished years earlier in one of the party's purges. In his dream, they sink slowly into dark water, sacrificing themselves so he might live. The image fills Winston with sorrow and guilt, for he realizes their love belonged to an era when human bonds still had meaning. He dreams also of a sunlit countryside where a dark-haired girl tears off her clothes in a gesture of liberation, as though sweeping away the suffocating control of the party. The dream fills him with longing for a world unshackled from oppression. He wakes to the harsh voice of the telescreen commanding him to begin the morning physical jerks, the mandatory exercises. His body aches, his spirit is weary. As he moves, Winston struggles to recall the past, but memory itself feels fragile, distorted by years of propaganda. He reflects grimly on the party's slogan: "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." Winston goes to his job at the Ministry of Truth, one of 4 massive government ministries that dominate life in Oceania. His work involves rewriting history, altering past records so that they align with the party's current version of events. If a prediction fails, he changes it so it seems accurate. If a person falls out of favor, he erases them from existence. Names are removed, statistics are altered, speech is rewritten. The scraps of truth are discarded into memory holes, chutes leading to incinerators. The party's lies become the official record, and the official record becomes truth. Winston understands the sinister power of this process. Reality itself becomes whatever the party decrees. Facts are not independent. They exist only in the party's words. During lunch in the canteen, Winston speaks with 2 colleagues. Syme, a brilliant but zealous linguist, is working on the latest edition of Newspeak, the official language designed to limit thought by reducing vocabulary. He explains enthusiastically that the destruction of words will make thought crime impossible, for one cannot rebel against the party if the words "to express rebellion" no longer exist. Parsons, Winston's neighbor, is his opposite, a dull, unimaginative man devoted to community activities and party loyalty. Winston sees that Syme is too intelligent, too perceptive, and knows he will one day be vaporized. Parsons, however, embodies the loyal citizen the party desires, unquestioning, servile, and easily manipulated. In his diary, Winston records a memory of a sordid encounter with a prostitute. Reflecting on it, he understands how the party has corrupted human intimacy. Love, desire, and private pleasure are viewed as dangerous, for they create loyalties beyond the party. Marriage is permitted only if it serves reproduction for the state, and passion is considered subversive. The party seeks to channel all human energy into devotion to Big Brother, leaving no room for independent bonds. To Winston, this realization deepens his sense of loss and alienation. Even the most personal aspects of life have been colonized by power. Winston contemplates whether hope for change lies in the proles, the working-class masses who make up the majority of society. Unlike party members, they live with fewer restrictions, retaining songs, markets, and simple pleasures. He recalls an incident where he briefly possessed proof of the party's falsification of history, a photograph showing party leaders where they should not have been. But such evidence was quickly destroyed, and with it the certainty of memory. Winston knows the party can rewrite the past endlessly. He clings to the idea that the proles, with their numbers and vitality, might one day awaken to their power and overthrow the regime. Yet he also fears they will never rise, lacking the political awareness necessary for rebellion. Unable to shake his unease, Winston wanders into a prole district. The streets are filled with life, markets bustling, quarrels breaking out, songs drifting from pubs. Here, the party's grip seems looser, though its poverty is grinding. Winston stops at an antique shop, where he purchases a small glass paperweight containing a piece of coral, a relic from a time before the party, fragile and beautiful. He speaks with the shop's elderly owner, Mr. Charrington, who recalls fragments of life in the old days and seems sympathetic. The shop's quiet atmosphere feels like a sanctuary, a place where the past can be remembered. As Winston leaves, he notices the dark-haired girl from the ministry, the same figure who haunted his dreams. Fear surges in him. Is she following him, a spy for the thought police? Panic and curiosity collide, leaving him shaken. Yet even through his dread, Winston senses she may play a role in his fate, binding him to a future he cannot yet foresee. Winston notices the dark-haired girl from the fiction department stumbling as she passes him in a hallway at the ministry. His first instinct is suspicion. She has lingered in his thoughts before, and he fears she may be a spy. Yet, to his astonishment, she slips a small piece of paper into his hand in the brief moment their bodies brush against each other. His heart races as he conceals it until he is safely alone. When he finally dares to open it, he is stunned by the simple, explosive words written in hurried script. I love you. The message electrifies him, leaving him dazed and trembling. In a world where any personal bond is a crime and desire itself is policed, this note is more than affection. It is rebellion incarnate. The fear of discovery collides with the intoxicating thrill of possibility, igniting in Winston both longing and defiance. For the first time in years, he feels a spark of life stronger than his despair. For days, Winston struggles with how to respond, watching Julia carefully in crowded places, never daring to linger. The tension gnaws at him, for every moment feels like an opportunity to be caught. Finally, in the noisy chaos of a canteen, they manage to exchange hurried words. Julia instructs him on where and how they can meet without drawing attention. Their first true rendezvous takes place in the countryside, where the open fields and trees provide shelter from the party's endless surveillance. The air smells of earth and freedom. There, Julia reveals her nature. Her rebellion is not driven by ideology, but by her personal desire to live, to feel, to love. She tells Winston how she has broken rules many times, not for lofty reasons, but to hold onto pleasure and humanity. Their kiss is fierce and urgent, an affirmation of their shared defiance. When they consummate their relationship, Winston feels it not just as passion, but as an act of political war against the party's suffocating grip. Their clandestine meetings become the lifeline of Winston's existence. Julia explains how she lives a double life, conforming outwardly while secretly savoring forbidden pleasures. She delights in subversion for its own sake, finding joy in every small victory against the party's repression. Winston is struck by her vitality, her instinctive refusal to surrender her inner self. In contrast, his rebellion has always been intellectual, grounded in memory, records, and a yearning for truth. Together, they complement each other. Julia's pragmatism fuels Winston's imagination, while his introspection gives their encounters a weight that transcends pleasure. Each stolen moment becomes an act of reclamation, proof that they still possess private lives beyond the reach of Big Brother. Determined to deepen their bond, Winston and Julia rent a small room above Mr. Charrington's antique shop. The modest space becomes a sanctuary, fragile yet precious. Within its walls, they dare to create a semblance of normal life. Julia brings contraband food like real chocolate and coffee, delicacies from a forgotten world. Winston revels in the luxury of simple pleasures, a soft bed, the taste of wine, the feeling of waking beside another person. The glass paperweight he once bought sits as a symbol of their refuge, delicate yet enduring. For the first time in years, Winston feels healthier, even hopeful, imagining that love and intimacy might allow them to resist the party suffocation. The room becomes their universe, a small pocket where humanity still breathes. At the Ministry of Truth, Winston continues his monotonous work. Yet even within his routine, he notices disturbing shifts. One day, Syme, the brilliant linguist working on the Newspeak dictionary, vanishes. His name is erased from records, his existence obliterated. Winston knows that Syme's intelligence was his downfall, too sharp for survival in Oceania. The chilling disappearance reminds Winston of the party's power to erase not only lives, but memory itself. In the refuge of the secret room, he and Julia discuss the dangers they face. They know their affair cannot last. Discovery is inevitable. Still, they cling to one another, cherishing every moment as an act of defiance. Their stolen hours become both a rebellion and a reprieve, a chance to savor what little freedom remains. A rare and unexpected invitation arrives for Winston. O'Brien, a member of the inner party, extends an offer to visit his luxurious apartment. This possibility fills Winston with equal parts terror and exhilaration. For years he has believed O'Brien to be more than he appears, perhaps a fellow skeptic, a man who sees through the party's lies. The invitation feels like confirmation, a chance to finally connect with someone beyond Julia who shares his forbidden thoughts. O'Brien's intelligence, his manner of speech, even his subtle hints of irony, seem to affirm Winston's conviction. For Winston, this meeting symbolizes not just personal validation, but the prospect of genuine resistance. The hope that he is not alone blooms stronger than ever. Haunted by dreams, Winston reflects on his past once more. He recalls his mother and sister, remembering their sacrifice and his own survival. Guilt seeps into him, for he knows that their deaths were a result of the party's cruel system. To Winston, their love and sacrifice symbolize the human bonds the party has destroyed. Julia listens, but her focus remains on the present. She accepts the inevitability of the party's dominance and prefers to carve out small victories rather than dream of revolution. This contrast sharpens Winston's awareness of their differences. His rebellion is steeped in ideals and memory, while Julia's is rooted in instinct and survival. Yet together, these approaches forge a fragile harmony that keeps them united. The long-anticipated meeting with O'Brien arrives. In his luxurious home, filled with comforts Winston has never known, O'Brien speaks with authority and confidence. He acknowledges their hatred of the party and hints at the existence of the Brotherhood, the underground resistance led by Emmanuel Goldstein. The atmosphere feels conspiratorial, electric with shared purpose. O'Brien offers them wine, and together they toast to the downfall of Big Brother. He extracts oaths from Winston and Julia, asking whether they are willing to sacrifice their safety, to lie, steal, corrupt, even kill in the service of the cause. They swear loyalty without hesitation, believing at last that their rebellion is no longer isolated. Winston feels as if the secret world he has long imagined has finally welcomed him into its fold. Amid the chaos of war and political upheaval, Winston receives a copy of Goldstein's forbidden book, The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism. Alone in their room, he begins reading with feverish intensity. The text articulates the mechanisms of the party's power, the perpetual state of war that drains resources, the manipulation of truth that erases history, and the hierarchy that ensures the high remain in control while the low remain oppressed. It explains how revolutions never liberate, but only replace one ruling class with another. For Winston, the book is both revelation and confirmation. It crystallizes what he has long suspected, that the party's oppression is deliberate, systematic, and designed to be eternal. Reading it, he feels as though the vague thoughts that haunted him for years have finally taken shape in words. In a rented room above the antique shop, Winston and Julia bask in what feels like safety. They speak of the future, imagining impossible things, the uprising of the proles, the crumbling of the party, perhaps even a life lived openly together. Their refuge seems untouchable, wrapped in the fragile magic of hope. But the illusion shatters in an instant. A harsh, metallic voice speaks from behind the picture frame on the wall, revealing the presence of a hidden telescreen. Mr. Charrington, once the kindly shopkeeper, enters as an agent of the thought police, his demeanor cold and unrecognizable. Armed men burst in, tearing apart the sanctuary. Winston and Julia are seized, their rebellion undone in a moment. Winston realizes with sickening clarity that the party's reach is limitless, that even their most private refuge has been an illusion. The fragile world they built together collapses in betrayal and capture, leaving only despair. Winston is taken to the Ministry of Love, a place whose very name drips with irony. Everyone knows it as the most terrifying institution in Oceania. The building is spotless, sterile, and bathed in glaring light that never dims, erasing any natural sense of time. Silence is broken only by the occasional muffled cries of unseen prisoners, a reminder of the horrors taking place behind closed doors. Winston is locked in a bare cell with no windows, no furniture but a bench and an ever-present telescreen. Every twitch of his body, every glance, is observed. Slowly, other prisoners are brought in, a poet who once wrote loyal songs, a frail man who worked in government, even members of the inner party. All sit in dread, waiting for their turn to be summoned. Winston realizes that the ministry's role is not only to punish outward actions, but to annihilate resistance at its root. Here, no one emerges unchanged. Every prisoner will be bent until the party reshapes their mind. Eventually, Winston comes face to face with O'Brien. For years, Winston believed O'Brien to be a secret ally, a man who quietly despised the party as he did. Now the truth cuts deep. O'Brien is not a friend, but his interrogator, his executioner in spirit if not in flesh. O'Brien explains calmly, almost kindly, that the party seeks not just obedience, but mastery over reality itself. He tells Winston that power is the only true goal, that freedom, happiness, and truth are illusions. Through systematic torture, electric shocks, starvation, sleep deprivation, O'Brien dismantles Winston's sense of self. Between questions and blows, he lectures about the party's doctrine, that reality exists solely in the human mind, and the party alone dictates that mind. The betrayal of Winston's hope is as crushing as the physical torment. He had clung to O'Brien as a beacon of shared humanity, and now he sees that beacon turned into a blade. The torture escalates into a realm beyond imagination. Winston is strapped to a machine designed to twist his body into unnatural positions, bringing him to the brink of death and back again. O'Brien asks him impossible questions and demands impossible answers. How many fingers am I holding up? O'Brien asks, while displaying 4. Under unbearable pain, Winston is forced to answer 5, then 3, then whatever you want. The truth no longer matters. Survival demands surrender. O'Brien's lesson is clear. If the party declares 2 + 2 = 5, then Winston must not only say it, but believe it. Pain drives Winston past the point of rational thought. He begins to question his own memory, his senses, even his sanity. In fleeting moments, he wonders whether O'Brien's arguments contain a kind of twisted logic. His inner resistance, the conviction that reality exists outside the party, begins to crumble under the relentless assault. By now, Winston is physically broken, yet O'Brien insists that his transformation is incomplete. Winston finds himself oddly dependent on O'Brien, seeing him at once as tormentor, teacher, and a strange kind of protector. O'Brien tells him that the party is not content with outward conformity. It seeks to conquer the inner self. The party wants loyalty not because it is useful, but because it demonstrates power. It does not aim to create a better world, only to maintain control forever. Winston glimpses the totality of their ambition. They aim to dominate not just actions, but feelings, to shape memory and perception until rebellion is unthinkable. In moments of weakness, Winston even feels a grim admiration for O'Brien's certainty. His individuality, the stubborn voice that once cried out against Big Brother, begins to dissolve. Piece by piece, Winston is being remade. At last, Winston is delivered to the dreaded room 101. This chamber is the stuff of whispered rumors among prisoners, each person convinced it contains their worst nightmare. For Winston, the terror is rats. O'Brien knows this, and now a cage of ravenous rodents is prepared to be clamped onto Winston's face. The sight unravels him completely. No ideology, no principle, no love can withstand the primal panic that seizes him. In a shriek of desperation, Winston betrays Julia, begging O'Brien to spare him and inflict the horror on her instead. The words burst from him involuntarily, shattering the last vestige of his defiance. The bond that had anchored his humanity, his love for Julia, collapses in an instant. The party has not only broken his body and mind, but forced him to destroy the one person he vowed never to betray. Winston is eventually released back into society, but he is no longer the same man. Hollowed out, he spends his days in the Chestnut Tree Cafe, drinking endless cups of Victory gin, playing chess with himself, and staring blankly at the telescreen. His body is frail, his face waxen, but more than that, his soul is gone. When he meets Julia by chance, they speak with detachment. Both admit they betrayed each other, and both confess that the love they once felt is dead. Their rebellion, their passion, their shared dreams, all erased. Alone, Winston sits beneath the ever-watchful eyes of Big Brother's portrait. A tear rolls down his cheek, not from grief, but from love. At last, he feels what the party always wanted, a pure, unshakable devotion to Big Brother. The struggle is over. Winston has won the victory over himself. He has learned to love Big Brother. Big picture analysis and themes. Power as an end in itself. Unlike revolutions that claim higher ideals, the party seeks only to consolidate power. Its actions are not means to some humane goal. They are perpetuations of dominance. Control of information equals control of reality. By continually rewriting records and shaping language, the party makes objective truth contingent. If you can change what people remember, you can change what they believe. Language and thought. Newspeak's purpose is to remove the words to think rebellious thoughts. It's a chilling demonstration of how thought depends on language. Surveillance and the public/private divide. The telescreen and the spies collapse the separation between public and private, turning intimacy into deception and fear. The fragility of human loyalty. The party does not merely punish dissent. It destroys the human capacity to trust and love. The betrayal in Room 101 shows that the last refuge of rebellion, human connection, can be engineered away. Hope and the proles. Winston's hope rests on the proles, who retain a living humanity. Yet their political impotence shows that vitality alone does not equal political change. 1984 is not just a cautionary tale about a particular political system. It's a meditation on the techniques a ruling power will use to control reality, memory, and human relationships. It's a book that asks uncomfortable questions. How much of what we accept as truth is constructed? What cost are we willing to pay to keep our private lives private? How vulnerable are we when the language we use to think is taken from us? Winston's journey, from clandestine diary to the bright smile of acceptance, is tragic because it charts the slow, surgical destruction of a human interior. Orwell's prose creates a world that feels uncomfortably plausible precisely because it speaks to mechanisms that exist in various forms even outside overt totalitarian states. Propaganda, institutional rewrite, surveillance technologies, and the erosion of public trust. If this summary helped you understand 1984 more clearly, consider subscribing for more chapter-by-chapter breakdowns and deep dives into classic books. Thank you for watching.